Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. Today, Republicans unveiled their agenda, if you could call it that, if they retake the House this November. But before we get to that, the most revealing preview into what that's actually going to look like came earlier this week. That's when the overwhelming majority of the House Republican Conference voted against a law that would clarify the language of the Electoral Count Act. That's a somewhat obscure piece of legislation from the 19th century that governs how presidents are elected and how members of Congress can object to electors. And this would just fix part of it to explicitly state what was already obvious, that a sitting president and his supporters in Congress can't overturn the results of a free and fair election simply by objecting to legitimate votes and bullying and browbeating the vice president into assisting a coup. Again, this is straightforward stuff, sort of a technocratic fix to statutory language to make it clear you can't do what Trump wanted to do. It's something that any politician, even nominally interested in preserving American democracy, should support. But here's the thing. Donald Trump is not interested in preserving American democracy. He is objectively pro-coup, which means the Republican Party, which remains firmly under his control, is objectively pro-coup as well. And so 203 House Republicans voted against the bill on Wednesday. Only 9 supported it. And as Democratic Congressman Pete Aguilar noted on this program last night, not one of those 9 members will be in Congress next year. Not one. So, even before you get to the substance, if you can call it that, of the Republican Party agenda, you know where they're coming from. They are already on the wrong side of history and of what polls show is the number one issue for voters heading into the midterms, threats to democracy. Now, one of the other issues top of mind for voters is, of course, abortion rights. Right now, in a post-Roe world, Republicans are eager to talk about just about anything else. And their agenda includes promises of tax cuts and deregulation, which you can be sure is one of those things they will absolutely do if they have full power. And they've got bromides against trans kids and social media and teachers who they've decided they're their enemy. The latter of which was exemplified by this truly unhinged rant from one parent in attendance at a big event today put on by House Republican leadership.
There are many other public education issues concerning parents like myself. The slow creep of critical race theory, diversity, equity, and inclusion, gender identity. Now we have SEL, which is social emotional learning. It's indoctrination disguised as programs like kindness initiatives or anti-bullying programs or diversity projects. These are all Marxist-style programs targeting our children.
I learned today from that woman that apparently social and emotional learning and kindness initiatives, including anti-bullying, is a form of Marxist indoctrination. I did not know that. You might have guessed there was no pushback from Republican Kevin McCarthy, the man who wants to be the next Speaker of the House, at the suggestion that anti-bullying programs are actually indoctrinating children into Marxism. But that's because McCarthy wants that kind of culture war nonsense and that energy to mobilize a base and suck up all the oxygen, again, to stop people from voting and talking about abortion. Now, this is really interesting when you look at this document. The GOP agenda has one scant mention of abortion rights, but it is telling, quote, protect the lives of unborn children and their mothers. Now, just to be clear, it's just simply untrue to say Republicans care about protecting the lives of pregnant people. They have shown themselves not to. And the abortion restrictions they have already pushed through that are existing in the country right now in states post-Roe make that clear. Let me give you an example. In Arkansas, a mother of 2 was forced to flee the state to receive an abortion after she learned that her pregnancy was non-viable at 19 weeks. That's after the cutoff of the Lindsey Graham proposed legislation and many other states. The pregnancy, which was non-viable, was high risk. But because her life wasn't immediately in danger, she was not allowed to receive an abortion in Arkansas. The Republican governor of Arkansas wanted to force her to continue to carry until she entered acute danger. In Ohio, another state under Republican rule, 2 more underage girls also had to flee that state so they could receive abortions that prevented them from carrying their rapists' babies to term as children. And I say more, of course, because we already know of one girl who was just 10 years old when she had to cross the border into Indiana earlier this year to terminate her pregnancy, which was the product of child rape. If Republicans had their way, those girls would have to flee the country instead. These stories, of course, are heartbreaking and enraging. And keep this in mind, they're the only ones we know about. These tragedies are unfolding silently all across the country all the time, which may be why Kevin McCarthy hedged when he was asked about a national abortion ban today.
Is abortion an issue that's on your radar that would be a day one priority?
No, our day one priority is the cost of living, security in your streets, parents needing the Bill of Rights. The Supreme Court's made that decision and moved it down to the public so the states, they could have their say.
He's not telling the truth there. I mean, I don't know if they'll do it on day one, but Republicans do not want to leave the issue of abortion up to the states. They claim abortion is the murder of children. Are they going to leave that to the states? It's why abortion was mentioned in the House Republicans' very short agenda, and why one prominent anti-abortion rights group tweeted, quote, "Thank you to Republican House leadership for your Commitment to America plan that recognizes the role Congress has in protecting unborn children." I'm going to state this very clearly. Make no mistake, a unified Republican government at the federal level, presidency, House, and Senate, means a national abortion ban. Full stop. This is what the conservative movement has been fighting for decades, and it will begin in the House. Now, thankfully, Republicans will not have unified control, at least not for now. Even if they do retake the House and even the Senate, Joe Biden will still be president. And Biden vowed today to veto a Republican bill banning abortion.
Already 166 House Republicans have signed on to a bill that would ban abortion nationwide. And the senior senator from South Carolina, Lindsey Graham, has proposed a national ban on abortion with criminal penalties put on doctors and put them in jail if they, in fact, violate the ban. So in 46 days, America's going to choose. If Republicans win control of the Congress, abortion will be banned. And by the way, it will be initially banned, but if they win Congress, I will veto it.
Now, Biden certainly will veto any bill that bans abortion, but the president is also going to have his hands full if Republicans retake the House, because the MAGA faithful are practically frothing at the mouth at the opportunity to grind Biden's agenda to a halt with investigations and inevitable impeachment of the president. Inevitable, I would say. Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger of Illinois, who has served in Congress for more than a decade and knows his Republican colleagues better than I do, also broke with his party over Donald Trump, the attempted coup, said impeaching Biden will be a top priority for his fellow Republicans.
That's going to look like child's play in terms of what Marjorie Taylor Greene is going to demand of Kevin McCarthy. They're going to demand an impeachment vote on President Biden every week. They're going to demand things like, let's make abortion illegal in all circumstances on this omnibus bill. I think it'll be a very difficult majority for him to govern, unless he just chooses to go absolutely crazy with them.
Yes, unless he chooses to go absolutely crazy with them, which will be the path of least resistance for keeping the caucus together. That is the future House Republicans are agitating for. And right now, the forecasts look good for them. They've got history behind them. The out-of-power party is favored in the midterms, and because of, in some cases, really lawless and discriminatory redistricting, which they themselves engineered in places like Ohio, for instance, 538 gives Republicans about a 2-to-1 chance of retaking the House, although that gap has narrowed from earlier this year when their odds were more in their favor. But here's the thing, as we keep hitting home, as we cover these midterms, as we've seen before in the special elections this year, nothing is set in stone. There is no fate, there is no destiny, there is just what people do. Here's an example. Take Ohio Republican congressional nominee J.R. Majewski. He is seen here appearing in a pro-Trump rap video. Now, even though he has promoted the QAnon conspiracy theory and was at the Capitol on January 6th, thanks to Republican state legislature gerrymandering of the state of Ohio, Majewski was favorite to flip Ohio's 9th congressional district away from the Democrats and incumbent Marcy Kaptur. But this week, the Associated Press reported that Majewski appeared to lie about the nature of his military service. He called himself a combat veteran, claiming to have served in Afghanistan, when in reality, at least according to the AP, he was actually deployed to Qatar, hundreds of miles away, where he loaded and unloaded planes for the Air Force. House Republicans have now essentially dropped Majewski, cut off their ad buys on his behalf, which means Democrats may hold that seat, or at least have a better shot of it, despite Republican gerrymandering. And there are a lot of bad Republican candidates running this cycle, which means all hope may not be lost for those voters who do not want to see a MAGA takeover of Congress.